Welcome to Hope, heartful outreach, positive encouragement. On this channel, we discuss real-life issues from a Christ follower's perspective. How can we improve our family lives, get out of debt, leave an inheritance to our loved ones, and use our talents to make an impact on our communities? Stay tuned for guest speakers who will share tips and resources to help you with these and other topics. Be sure to comment, like, and subscribe. And now, let's join today's guest speaker.
Hi, my name is Holman-Smith, and I am a entrepreneur / business owner here in Jacksonville, Florida. I was asked to speak about my legacy, but in order to do that, I have to give you a little bit about my history. I was born in Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1973 to Donald and Rochelle, but I was actually raised in the beginning by my grandparents, Leonard and Elizabeth Holman. My grandfather was one of the first Black jewelry store owners in North Tulsa. He ran Holman Jewelry from the 1940s all the way up until the early 2000s when he retired, and then my uncle took over the store. My grandfather had his business in the historic area known as Black Wall Street after it was rebuilt, and he stayed there until they closed after serving the community for over 65 years. Even now, there you have the old Holman Jewelry sign and a little bit about my grandfather and our family in the local museum that gives the history of Black Wall Street. I learned from an early age that working for yourself will benefit yourself, not only yourself, but your family and your community. I learned that from my grandfather. Watching him not only have pride in his work, but remember every customer that came in, remember every detail about their life and their family, greeting them outside of the store as well as inside the store. I mean, if you went to high school in North Tulsa between the 1950s till the 2000s, everyone got a class ring from Holman Jewelry. You couldn't say Holman Jewelry and people not know who you were talking about. That's just a fact. My grandfather was an icon. Okay, in his day, he was an icon. And I'm proud of that because he instilled in me that taking pride and working hard, you can accomplish a lot of things. I remember there was a time when I was younger, I used to ask my grandfather for money, and he said, "Baby, you sure got them skills to get a job." He used to tell me, you can always get them jobs. You can always get them jobs. That was his way of saying, I'm not giving you no money. But it just made me work that much more harder and be happy in what I did for myself, seeing my accomplishments. Looking back on that, sometimes I feel I've gotten away from that perspective, but I'm slowly returning to my roots when it comes to business. So I remember back in the day, my parents gave me a Radio Shack Tandy computer. Boom, that thing was big as a television back then. But that's how I started learning about computers and learning administrative duties. My mother said, you need to learn how to type. You have to learn how to type in order to get a job. And so my mother taught me how to type. And then I had a really bad accent back then. And so my mother was like, you have to drop your accent. You have to talk proper. You have to do this in order to get a job. I gleaned from every job that I've had over those years. From the ages of 14 to 18, I think I had about 5 jobs. And during those 5, they were always office administrative jobs. So I learned the skills. I learned the software. I learned the office culture, so to speak. And I put that underneath my belt. And then I moved to Japan for about 10 years. And I taught English there and went to school there, graduated college there, worked there for a little bit, but then came back to the States. And I worked in corporate America as a translator, from English to Japanese and English to Korean and back and forth. And I wasn't happy working in corporate America. I was being asked to do more and more outside of my pay grade or what I was being paid for. So it's like I was wearing 3 and 4 jobs, but only being paid for one, if that makes sense. And so I decided that I wanted to work for myself. So in 2004, I decided that I wanted to work as an executive admin, but I wanted to work remotely. And back then, working remotely or virtually was not really heard of. So I was one of the beginners in that. And back then, they had online portals to where you can find jobs less than what it is today. And so I remember getting my first client as a virtual assistant. And I was like, oh, wow, this is great. I can earn salary from home and have one client and just deal with them. Not having to go into an office, not having to really work it wasn't straight 9 to 5, but it was as needed, but still getting paid full time. It was great. But then I started thinking, what if there were more of me? But I kept that on the back burner and I stayed working as a remote worker up until 2010 when I got the opportunity again to go to Japan and work. And I was teaching gospel music and English again. And we were there for a couple of years, me and my husband. And we were there during the tsunami that took place in 2011. But shortly after that, I got a call, and my father had been diagnosed with colon and pancreatic cancer, and my mother wanted us to come back home. And the Lord bless where we were able to kind of fold things within a matter of weeks to get back to California. And so because someone needed to be with him at all times, I said, well, let me go ahead and see about revamping and getting more work virtually. By this time, this is now 2011, virtual workers are a little bit more common. And so I started again. I got one client, which was easy for me to get. And I worked that client while taking care of my father. But my father passed away 3 months after our return. And it was a little rough, to say the least. When I say I was daddy's girl, I was daddy's girl. He was my hero. And like my grandfather, my father instilled in me the mind of an entrepreneur. My father had tons of ideas, but although he had the ideas, he didn't have the follow through to it. So he never really realized his dreams in his lifetime. But my father wrote 3 books that I went on to have published after his passing. And I think that he would have been proud of that. After his passing, I kept my client, and me and my husband ended up moving back to Jacksonville, Florida. And the thought in my head came again, what if there were more of me? What if I had more clients, not just selling for one client? And I said, okay, well, let me see what I can do. So I built a website and I incorporated myself and called it Legacy Group Services. And I became we. I started a company of remote workers. And so we ended up getting contracts for customer service, people needing call center work from during normal business hours to around the clock. One of my largest clients was Priceline and Orbis.com. They wanted online chat support 24/7. That was just like a blessing that dropped into my, I was like, wow. And they needed tons of workers. And I mean, it was remote. So I started a small call center. And we had 26 workers, and they were all working remotely. They came into my office, but they were allowed to choose their own hours. And they talked and helped customers remotely with reservations, counseling reservations, making changes to it, et cetera, so forth. We handled all that for Priceline and Orbitz.com. Then we also worked with T-Mobile and Carnival Cruise Lines at that time. I also had other clients that dealt with administrative duties only. So I would say within a matter of 2 years, we had over 32 workers working for Legacy Group Services and dozens of clients. Everything from administrative services, customer service, social media management to website design. We helped entrepreneurs, executives, small businesses, even medium-sized businesses, and of course, the larger businesses that needed just a little extra staffing. The growth of it was just so amazing, that it was beyond my belief that it could be what I had envisioned and more. But in 2016, my mother fell ill and I had to step away from that business. And she came, I moved her to Jacksonville and took care of her for about 2 years. And then she got better. But by this time, I was like, okay, what am I going to do? And I had experienced a lot of other losses in my life. And I kind of went into a small depression cycle. And so in order to build me up and to help fill that hole that I had in my heart, my husband was like, let's get a dog. And I was like, I don't want no dog. He's like, come on, dear. I had a pit bull before. And I was like, I sure don't want no pit bull. And so he talked me into taking a ride to Georgia. And I tell everybody it was like a 2-hour ride to Georgia. My husband said it wasn't, but it felt like a 2-hour ride to Georgia. And when we got there, they put this puppy in my hand, and he was a blue-nosed pit bull. And I fell in love instantly. And I took him home, and I raised him as if he were a child. And he and I bonded. And it was just amazing how everything changed for me with his arrival. And I don't know if I told you, but his name is Jonas. So 6 months into having Jonas, there was a big dog food recall. And that recall forced me to start making Jonas's own food. I talked to his vet. She was telling me what he would need to have in his nutrition. She sent me articles from, the veterinary society. She put me in contact with a couple of pet nutritionists and veterinary professors that I started talking to. And I started making recipes, and I was putting all this stuff on internet while I was doing it. And one thing led to another. People were saying what I was doing for my Jonas and how he started loving the food. And I started getting requests for me to make food for other people's dogs. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that for you. It takes enough time for me just to do it for my dog. What makes you think I want to do it for you? But after my first client kept hounding, she hounded me for 3 months, 3 long months. And I made her some food and shipped it off to her. And her dogs loved it. And so she became a regular. And then she referred others. And I started thinking, I'm like, this is something. I mean, people are asking me to make dog food for their fur babies. And it kind of spiraled from there. And I said, well, let me maybe I should make a business out of it. Talked to my husband, and he said, hey, if you got the customers, do it, do it. And I prayed over it. And the name of the company came to me. And I named my dog food company Son of a Pit. And everybody's like, oh my goodness, that's a unique name. Yeah, you can never forget that name, Son of a Pit. Say it too fast and people might think you're saying the wrong thing. But what started off as just me making food for Jonas began me making food for other people's dogs. And we started off with just wet food. And we were doing really well at the beginning of 2019 into later part of 2019. And then 2020 came in and COVID hit. And it wiped out almost all our business. And then my mom fell ill again. And I became a full-time caregiver. So 2020 to 2022 was a down period for business, for my business. But I was like, well, what can I do? People are not really wanting to buy wet food. So it was like the idea of dry dog food dropped into my spirit. And I was like, okay, dry dog food. And I started researching how to make dry dog food. So I became independent in doing, I'd say, 90% of the work. In doing so, I became the first Black female dog food manufacturer in North America. And there's only 3 Black-owned dog food companies in the U.S. Mine is one. We're still growing. We're still experiencing ups and downs. But what I will say in this is that, and this is for anyone that is watching, is that we all have ups and downs. And we all have dreams. No matter what you want to accomplish, you're going to have humps, hills, mountains. But as long as you keep moving forward, one step at a time, you don't have to push to make it to the top in a day. It could take 10 years to get where you need to get. As long as you keep striving, as long as you keep pushing, as long as you remain focused in what you want to do. And yes, it's going to get hard. It's going to get tough. And there's going to be times you really want to quit, but don't. Because that little mustard seed that was placed in you requires you to have faith and hope that not only will God fulfill it for you, but He'll give you the strength to endure it until you make it to where you need to be and to keep it going. Because once you're there, you got to stay there. So it's a continuing process of growing, accomplishing, and teaching someone else. Because I firmly believe that what I know, I want to pass on to others. So don't give up. Don't give up your dreams. Always whether small strides or large strides, always make strides to get to the next level and the next level and the next level, because you're not alone in doing this. You're not. And regardless of how you feel today, remember, the hope in here helps us to push forward to tomorrow. So, if you want to know more about my businesses, my virtual assistant business is called Legacy Group Services, and you can find us at thelegacygroupfl.com, and my dog food company, Son of a Pit, of course, sonofapit.com. We're all over social media. We're for mid to extra large size dogs, and if you type in, if you want to buy or purchase dry dog food and treats, just use the code HOPE23 in the checkout and you'll get 25% off your order. Okay? Well, it was wonderful talking to you. I hope you're encouraged. Please be encouraged and have a great day.